It started with a laugh. Not loud, not forced. Just that kind of accidental, reflexive laugh that escapes when you try to whisper something stupid to your friend, but miss the timing. She had meant to say it earlier, before the door closed. But now the hallway was empty, except for staff, and the people still pretending they weren't looking. "Is that Ringgit?" she said too clearly. The man in the black suit, back turned to the main room, froze for half a beat, just enough to mark that the name hit. Two staff members exchanged a glance. One of them, the shorter man with the clipboard and wrong-colored lanyard, took a half step forward, then hesitated. The girl was already clutching her phone under her sleeve like a kid stealing candy. A second girl beside her mouthed, "No way," but didn't finish it, just turned slightly, angling her eyes without moving her neck. Across the corridor, two women in event uniforms stopped adjusting the tablecloth. One of them tilted her head, as if to listen. It wasn't a place for fans. The lighting was too low, the carpet too old, the sign on the locked glass door too vague. The kind of space that uses words like retreat and holding period and never explains what they mean. Someone said, "Is this private?" But no one answered. RM didn't speak either. He hadn't turned around, but the badge on his chest was visible now, half hidden by the lapel. The girl who laughed first stopped smiling. A third person, not with the original group, lifted her phone chest high and then changed her mind, letting it hover near her bag, like maybe she wasn't filming. A man behind her coughed. The sound didn't match the mood. It bounced off the wrong wall. Then, someone from staff stepped forward and asked, quietly but clearly, "Sir, were you invited to this room?" There was no accusation, no threat, but the question cut cleaner than if there had been. RM turned halfway, not fully, just enough to meet the speaker's eyes. A pause, not dramatic, just slightly too long, enough for everyone nearby to realize they were part of something that hadn't been meant to happen. One of the staff reached for the wall panel, just barely, just to check the lock, but even that small gesture drew eyes. Someone behind the front partition turned their head too quickly and caught sight of the man in the suit. "That's him," a voice said, flat, more confused than excited. The girl with the phone dropped it back into her sleeve, but not fast enough. A man in catering whites ducked his head and backed through the service door without speaking. The clipboard was gone from the staffer's hand. In its place, a badge scanner blinked red. Inside the room, someone coughed, and it wasn't covered by music. It cut through like an open mic. Two women who'd been sorting wristbands paused mid-conversation and stared in the same direction without looking at each other. One of them mouthed a name. The other gave the tiniest shake of the head. Then the light shifted, just the hallway dimmers flickering back to default, and it made everything worse. A group of latecomers stepped in from the elevator. One of them, not young, not old, not a fan, took 3 steps forward, stopped, and said too audibly, "What's he doing here?" It wasn't aggressive, it wasn't loud, but it made 2 phones rise instantly. One in a purse, one in a hand. RM hadn't moved, but the badge on his jacket, still visible, now reflected light directly, and the logo became clear. Not music, not charity, not performance-related, not defensible. The event title was 4 words. None of them were explainable. Not here, not now, not with this crowd. A door inside the room opened halfway. No one came out. A staff member beside it stared straight ahead, as if holding breath. One of the girls who had laughed was already walking backwards toward the elevator, but the other stayed. She wasn't filming. She wasn't speaking. She was just watching, very still, as if waiting for someone else to confirm that the thing she saw was the same thing they were all seeing. A man in a gray vest, older, with the kind of voice that didn't suit whispers, asked, not to anyone, "Wait, is this a press thing?" No one answered, but a ripple moved through the hallway, like someone had dropped temperature into the air. People started adjusting their posture without knowing why. A woman near the back said, "No photos, please." But she didn't have a badge, and her tone wasn't authority, just panic dressed as control. Someone laughed again. Wrong time, wrong volume, nervous. Another girl pulled her hair over her face and turned away from the glass, pretending to look for someone. Inside the event room, a curtain shifted, just once, enough to suggest someone had moved behind it. The lights didn't change, but they felt different. One of the younger staffers, barely older than the guests, whispered to the man with the scanner, but he didn't reply. Instead, he took 1 step forward and reached out, polite but mechanical. "Sir, if you could please..." RM raised one hand slightly. Not to wave, not to gesture, just to acknowledge sound. He still hadn't spoken, but now, One of the women by the wristband table turned her entire body away, covered her mouth, and said something inaudible to her friend. The friend was already texting. 2 others had opened notes apps, not for calls, for documentation. The girl who had first said his name whispered, too late. Maybe it's not him. But no one corrected her. No one agreed either. Someone dropped a metal water bottle, and the clang cracked down the corridor like a cue. Inside the room, someone finally closed the inner curtain. Not fast, not loud, just deliberate. It was the first definitive action. It made everything worse. The girl with the phone finally lifted it, not to film, but to check the time, or pretend to. Her hand was shaking slightly, and she pulled the sleeve farther down, though no one had told her to stop. Next to her, the man in the gray vest stepped back and said under his breath, "I think we should go." But his feet didn't move. Across the hall, 2 younger guys were half laughing, in that way people do, when they're not sure if they're allowed to. One of them was mouthing something like, "No way." The other was still staring, lips slightly parted, eyes tracking every micro movement like watching a traffic accident unfold in ultra slow motion. The staffer with the scanner now had both hands raised, not aggressively, not blocking, just hovering in that weird middle place between de-escalation and paralysis. Behind him, the sign on the conference room door became visible for the first time. Client Integrity Review. Black serif letters on whiteboard. Nothing more. No logo. No explanation. Just 4 words that made everything worse the longer you looked at them. The girl by the wristbands had now stepped away from her table. She didn't run. She didn't even walk fast. She just moved, deliberately, like she was pretending to go somewhere she didn't actually need to be. Someone tried to buzz the elevator. It didn't come. Another phone appeared, too obviously this time. The person holding it caught themselves and flipped it over, screened down against their chest, like a badge. Too late. A man in a navy jacket muttered, "Don't," to no one in particular. The hallway had filled now. Not with people, but with that particular density of air that happens when no one wants to breathe too loud. A girl near the water cooler whispered, "He's not supposed to be here." Her friend shook her head once, violently, not to disagree, but to make her shut up. Inside the room, a door clicked. No one came out, again. But the click was enough. The clipboard guy stepped aside. Not forward, not back, just slightly away, as if removing himself from view. RM still hadn't spoken. He hadn't moved, beyond that single hand. But now he shifted his weight slightly, as if to go. And in that tiny adjustment, a man farther back, not young, not old, spoke, suddenly, stupidly. "Is this legal?" He regretted it the moment it left his mouth. The words hit the room like thrown gravel. Someone gasped. A different someone said, "Don't say that." But no one moved to fix it, because nothing could be fixed. The elevator dinged, but it wasn't going up. It was arriving, from below. And when the doors opened, 2 women in security polo shirts stepped out, looked up, and froze just half a second too long. One of them glanced at the sign on the door. The other looked directly at RM. Not recognition, not confusion, just confirmation. The kind that says, "Yes, this is the moment we hoped wouldn't happen." The staffer with the scanner turned away. Fully. As if by doing so, he could opt out of participation. The girl who had laughed first was gone. No one saw her leave. The hallway was now too full of people who were staying only because no one else was leaving. Phones weren't up, but they weren't away. Eyes darted sideways, down, back up. Words were being typed in pockets, screenshots of nothing, captions without photos. The man in the gray vest was still there. He wasn't saying anything now. He was just watching, like the rest of them, waiting to see what RM would do, what anyone would do, what this was. Because whatever it was, it had already started, and no one knew how to end it. Someone finally spoke RM's name. Not a question, not a shout, just a quiet, shocked statement, like the words had escaped without permission. It came from the far side of the hallway, near the catering cart, from a woman who hadn't said a word until now. Her voice cracked slightly in the middle, and that crack tore open the space like a fault line. The reaction wasn't collective. It fractured. A group of 3 near the elevator stepped back at once, murmuring to each other in bursts. "It's actually him. No, but why here? Can't be real." One of them giggled, not out of joy, but because her throat didn't know what else to do. Near the service door, a young guy in a branded t-shirt with a staff pass around his neck suddenly looked like he wanted to run, but his legs were too slow for his eyes. A woman in heels reached for the fire exit handle, changed her mind. Someone else whispered, "Get him out." But it was too quiet. said to the wrong person, and landed nowhere. No one moved. Not RM, not the staff, not the guests who had no business being witnesses to this. The security woman hadn't taken another step. One was pressing something on her shoulder mic, but no sound came out. She didn't say the name. She didn't need to. The girl with the phone from earlier was standing dead still now, screen lit in her palm. Not recording, not typing. Just frozen on the last thing she'd looked up. The event name, the time, the location. All the pieces were public, just not meant to be in the same frame. RM's face was fully visible now. He didn't hide, didn't lower his eyes, didn't turn away. But he didn't offer anything either. The expression wasn't blank. It was unreadable in a way that dared people to misread it. Someone in the back coughed again. Then someone else whispered, "I don't think they can cover this." And another voice, male, added bitterly, "They shouldn't." No one replied. The curtain inside the conference room rippled once more, just slightly, and then went still. Whoever was behind it wasn't coming out. Whoever had brought him in wasn't stepping forward. The hallway was now its own ecosystem, full of fragments, glances, tiny gestures, shoulder turns, unfinished sentences, eyes darting toward doors that refused to open. A girl with a lanyard took a single photo. The sound was off. The shutter was silent, but somehow everyone knew. Two heads turned. A third girl looked at her with disbelief, not at the act, but at the certainty that it would now exist online. RM took a step. Just one. It was enough to send a ripple backward. Not a wave of fear, not even tension. Just movement. Like the hallway had shifted its center of gravity and everyone was slightly off balance. A woman by the wall grabbed the sleeve of her friend's coat and said, low and fast, "Don't make a scene," which would have been ironic if anyone had energy to laugh. The security woman finally spoke into her mic. Too soft to hear, too late to matter, because the scene had already happened. The thing no one wanted to name was already here. The taboo wasn't being violated. It had already been crossed. No apology could unstep the step. No PR statement could edit the moment before the curtain moved. The staffer who had tried to intervene earlier was gone now, quietly vanished. His scanner still lay blinking red on the table. The clipboard was missing. RM didn't look at the camera. He didn't leave either. The elevator dinged again. This time, no one moved. The hallway had become something else. A wound, an archive, a glitch no one could scroll past. No one cried, no one screamed, but people were already rewriting what they saw, already deciding what they hadn't seen, already wondering if someone else would post it first. RM turned, finally, and walked. Not fast, not slow, just away, toward a hallway that didn't exist 5 minutes ago and now wouldn't ever stop echoing. The door behind him never closed, and no one followed. But everyone would remember, and no one would know what they were supposed to do with that memory.